This is my time.
Great things are happening at UNC Charlotte. Ranked among the top 100 public universities, Charlotte is on the rise. With over 30,000 students, championship athletics, and innovative academics, we're smashing records. Bringing amazing ideas to life with top-tier research. Great things are happening for the love of Charlotte.
Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? I am Richard Buttermer. I am the Dean of the Belk College of Business at UNC Charlotte. And on behalf of the Belk College and the Childress Klein Center for Real Estate, I'm pleased to welcome you to the 2024 State of Housing in Charlotte Summit. I'd like to extend a special welcome to elected officials and board members who are attending our summit today, and especially to our sponsors whose generous support have helped make this event possible. As the Charlotte region's public research university, UNC Charlotte is one of the fastest rising universities in the country. We've recently been ranked in the top 100 of public universities by U.S. News & World Report. And as you've likely heard, the university later in the academic year will be reclassified as an R1 university, putting us on par with the top research universities across America. This is the highest Carnegie Research classification, and it will be a major economic driver for Charlotte, especially as we compete with other cities for new companies, new headquarters, because what they look for is talent development, and that's what we do as an R1 institution. And the Belk College of Business is also on the rise. We are currently ranked in the top 70 of public business schools in the United States, and we're going to take that to a much higher level soon. We're ranked among the top 25% of total business schools in the nation for undergraduate businesses, and many of our programs, including our real estate program, are recognized as among the best in the nation. One of our primary missions is to cultivate the next talent of next generation of business leaders. And today's State of Housing in Charlotte presentation is a prime example of our faculty solving business problems through innovative programs, impactful research, and strong industry and community partnerships. Speaking of industry partnerships, I want to especially thank our two platinum-level sponsors, Phase & Enterprises and Canopy Realtor Association, as well as True Homes for their generous support, as it enables us to provide this crucial research to the Charlotte community. And their support has not just been this year, that's been a multi-year commitment they've made to this product, which has allowed us to do this for the 6th year in a row. So we're going to start today with the presentation of our 2024 State of Housing in Charlotte report that Dr. Chu will be giving in just a second, followed by a question and answer session. We'll take questions from our guests here in the audience and the more than 100 people that are joining us remotely through Zoom. So they'll be able to enter questions in the Zoom chat, and we'll be able to take those questions as part of our follow-up. Following this presentation and Q&A, we'll take a short 10-minute break, reset the stage, and then we'll reconvene for a panel discussion on the state of housing in Charlotte. And with that, I'll turn it over to my great colleague and friend, Dr. Chu.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks, everybody, for coming. So I'm going to start with my presentation with an overview of the economy. So to understand the supply and demand of housing in Charlotte, right? So I'm going to start with the demand side. We are going to look at population growth. So I think this is no surprise to everybody that we are seeing population growth, very robust population growth in the Charlotte MSA. So this is based on the census data. The latest census data is for the year of 2023. So that's what we have. You can see that population growth has been around 2% level, and we saw a little bit higher and low numbers during COVID and after COVID. But we're still seeing in 2023 1.8% population growth. Okay, so when people are moving to this area, they'll need houses. So that's the demand side. Of course, the other way to look at demand side is to look at the number of households, because each household may have 1, 2, or 3 person. Okay, so that will have different implications for the demand for housing. So we are, of course, not not surprisingly, we are also seeing growth in the number of households in this area. So you can see that 2022, we had a very high increase in the number of households. And one of the reasons a lot of people move into this area are actually young single professionals. Okay, so that number is very different than the existing households. So the existing households, the average number of people within the households are going to be different than whoever is moving in. So that will have implications for the housing demand as well. So this gives you like a dramatic change in the household size in this area. Okay, so the household size has been very, very stable at around 2.65 person per household until very recently, 2022, 2021. So you may not think this is like dramatic from 2.65 to almost 2.5, but this tells you the people that are moving in, most of them are single because this is on the margin. That's a big change. Okay? It has been very, very stable even if you go back. Okay? This will translate into demand for different size houses. Okay? And so that's the demand side. So there is a strong demand because people are moving in. People want to move to Charlotte, wants to live here, wants to work here. Right? Now let's look at the supply side of housing. So this gives us the number of housing units that Charlotte MSA has. Not surprisingly, we are also seeing robust growth in the number of housing units over the years. But of course, you can also break down the housing units into owner-occupied and rental housing, okay? Because this is kind of very important, especially in the recent years, because we have seen development of a lot of multifamily apartment units in this area, okay, during the last several years. So you can see that we are seeing robust growth in owner-occupied, but not as much as the rental units, multifamily units. Not surprising. I think you see this in the city, okay? But when we compare the supply and demand, what I'm doing here is to calculate every year the increase in the demand side, which is the increase in the number of households. Okay, compare it with the increase in the number of housing units. So that's the supply side. Okay, and I should explain this earlier. So 2020, we did not have data. The reason is that was COVID. Census just didn't want to do anything, so they did not have data. And so this is the 2 years of change. So you may see this is huge, but this is 2 years of change. So here I'm plotting starting from 2014, but there was, since the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, there has been an underbuilding problem throughout the country, and Charlotte is not an exception, okay? And so we started to catching up. So even in the aftermath of that, you can see that the demand side is in most years greater than the supply side, okay? And we're doing better in 2018, 2019, and COVID reversed that because probably you guys still remember there's labor shortage, the lumber cost was quadrupled and everything. So that reversed that a little bit, and that continued to 2022. But we are seeing a better sign, a good sign of that in 2023. 2023, we built more than the number of households that are moving in this area. So this created a surplus of 6,500 units. Okay, so you may think that's a good news. But so if we go back and try to understand the whole thing, so we estimate that since the Great Recession, the Charlotte MSA built up a shortage or deficit of 30 to 40,000 housing units. Okay? And now what we are looking at now is probably every year we are going to see like 20,000 to 30,000 household number of household increase. That's the demand side, right? And we increase in the housing units in 2023 is 24,000. We created a surplus of 6,500 units. Okay? If we just want to cover that, if we continue to build a surplus every year like that, it will still take at least 5 to 6 years. But my guess is we are not going to be able to see this trend to continue. Okay? So this surplus was built because the extremely low interest rate after COVID, and then I think everybody knows what happened in the later half of 2023, 2024, interest rate increased dramatically, development activity went like that. Okay? When that's going to hit the market? 2025, 2026, 2027. Because there was almost no new development activity starting in later 2023 or 2024 because of all those very high interest rate and things. Okay, so this is unlikely to be the case over the next several years. So we are still gonna be facing a deficit of at least more than 20,000 housing units in this market. And of course, you may say, okay, I heard people talking about there is a oversupply of multifamily somewhere else, but this is the vacant units, for rent vacant units in the Charlotte area. We see, yeah, there is a huge increase, okay? Because we built so many over the last several years, it takes time for the market to absorb, okay? But not so much for in terms of for sale. There is an increasing, but not in terms of the number. It's not a lot. It's about increase of 500 units for sale vacant units. So that sets up the stage to understanding the supply and demand. So the demand has been strong. It will remain strong. Okay, I think people still want to move to Charlotte, and especially people from those high-cost areas still sees this market as much lower, prices much lower than California, New York. People are still moving from those areas. So that the demand is still there, and supply is a big question mark. Okay? We did good in 2023, but how are we going to be able to do that in 2024, 2025? I'm not sure. Okay? So now let's zoom in to look at the prices, the price levels of, so this is for the single family owner-occupied houses. Okay, so here I'm plotting since January 2022 to September 2024. You see a lot of ups and downs. That's very usual, seasonal. Okay, usually the prices are higher during the summer. Okay, June, July, and then goes down in winter. Okay, but that's fine. But if you take a year-over-year view, this is what we have, right? From September 2023 to September 2024, house prices are still increasing in the area of Charlotte, 3.76%, okay? And last year, we saw a small decrease, but this year, it's still increasing. Okay, you may hear people saying that prices are decreasing because of the extremely high interest rate. Yes, interest rate was very high. Before the hike of interest rate, mortgage interest rate was probably below 4%, right? And then the mortgage interest rate went up to 7.5%. But despite that, we are still seeing price increase. It's not decreasing. Okay? And the growth rate is probably coming back to the pre-COVID area where we saw every year about 4 to 5% house price increase. Okay? I think that's what's going to happen if we do not do anything. Okay? And to understand like how the market dynamics goes, one thing we look at is days on the market. This is the number of days between you list the house and when the house is on the contract. Right? So when the number of days is extremely short, suggesting that supply side is very, very tight. Okay, you have to go and look at and really trying to get the house. Okay, so here when I plot this, it was, if you look at this, this was like at the end of the COVID. Okay, it was 5-6 days. Okay, and during COVID, I remember it was June of 2021 or sometimes. The median days on the market was 3. Okay? So it's great for the sellers. It's terrible for the buyers. Right? You pay the high price, you may still not get the home you wanted because you just want to jump on that one. Now, things are much, much better. We are looking at 20-something days on the market, the median. But I did not plot this. It's in the report. If we go back, historical average was like 50-60 days. This is still much, much lower. The supply side is still very, very tight. Okay, now let's look at really the affordability issue. Let's look at the lower end of the house price distribution. Okay, so, I mean, a lot of people will say the $150,000 house is probably an entry-level house. First-time home buyer, out of college, 2-3 years, or even longer, trying to get a house at $150,000. 2%. Okay, good luck of getting those houses. Right? And even if we double that, looking at $300,000, only 19.3%. And there has been a dramatic change. Even in 2021, we had 36%. When we started this project in 2019, this number was 54. This is how things changed so fast over a 6-year period. So here, what I'm showing you is, on the first column, is the growth rate of prices from 2001 to 2010. So kind of before the recession or including the recession. This is for the very lower end. This is 10th percentile price. This is the 90th percentile price. So very high end. What you see is at the high end, before the Great Recession, at the high end, the price increased much faster. Okay? And the second column is from 2010 to 2021. Okay? And you can see at the lower end, the price increased much faster, 15% every year for over 10 years. That's what got this housing affordability problem into big trouble, because the lower end increased very, very dramatically, but the high end is only 5.1%. Okay? This kind of changed a little bit after COVID. After COVID, this is the lower end, this is high end. High end increased faster. Okay? And I think there is a demand for space because work from home, people need bigger houses. That drove up a lot of the prices. And also, why the lower end is not increasing as fast, because we built so many apartments, multifamily. That competes with the lower end of the single family houses. Okay? But I don't know whether this trend will continue. But hope is the lower end stays at a lower rate so that affordability does not deteriorate very, very fast. Here, what I'm plotting is the income, the household income you need to have to afford a certain level of house. Okay? So the first column here is for the 10th percentile. So lowest 10% price. How much income a household needs to earn to be able to comfortably afford that house. When we say comfortably afford, you're not spending more than 30% of your gross income into house and housing-related expenses. Okay? So I think this is 2024, this is 2015 maybe, but in 2023, you need to earn $93,000 to afford a 10th percentile house. And then this is how much you need to make to earn a medium-priced house, $152,000, right? Now in 2024, okay, depending on what interest rate I use, because this is the number when I calculated when I was writing the report in the middle of October. When I checked, the prevailing mortgage interest rate was 6.08. This is like 2 days ago. When I checked, the interest rate was 7%. Okay? And so if interest rate stays at 6%, $87,000 to be able to afford a 10th percentile house. Okay? And $138,000 to be able to afford a medium-priced house. If interest rate stays at 7%, not much change. Because price increases a little bit, interest rate decreases a little bit. It almost cancels out the same as last year. Okay, and the next question is, we all know the Federal Reserve is going to cut interest rate. Is that going to translate into big changes, decreases in interest rate going forward? My answer is probably not. The reason is we are going to build up a huge deficit going forward. When you do that, it drives up interest rate. You cannot have a very low interest rate and a huge deficit. It just doesn't happen. Okay, so people ask me, should I wait until interest rate to go down further to buy the house? I was like, I'm not sure about that. Okay, I know prices are probably gonna keep increasing. Interest rate probably not gonna be decreasing anytime soon. And the other message, which I also said last year, is you're not gonna be able to see 4% mortgage interest rate for many, many years. Probably for my lifetime. So the kind of 3-4% mortgage interest rate we experienced, like after Great Recession, before the COVID, was not the norm. It was not. If you go back before that, 5, 6, 7, 8% was the norm. So, takeaways. Okay? 50 to 50% cannot afford a 10th percentile house. This is the lowest 10%. But 50 to 55% of households in this area cannot afford that. But if we are looking at the medium-priced house, 75 to 78% of households cannot afford that. Okay? Why two numbers? Depending on the interest rate again. So now let's take a look at the rental market to see whether there is whether it's different than the owner-occupied. So this is the number of apartment units tracked by CoStar. Okay, so that's a commercial real estate data provider. So they track only large complexes. Okay, but what we see is consistently we are seeing big increases in recent years in terms of the number of apartment units that are put on the market. Okay, very robust increase, and as a result, 2022 was the first year since the recession we saw a decrease in apartment rents. We still see this in 2023. 2023 was the first year, and then we still saw this in 2024. Okay, so, but not much. Not much, but it's decreasing because of the oversupply of, I wouldn't really call that oversupply because we built a lot of apartment units. Okay, again, this is unlikely to continue because we started very few in 2023, 2024. Those are supposed to be hitting the market 2025, 2026, 2027. Okay, so the rent might go up again in the near future. So this gives you the growth rate of the average rent in this area, okay, over the last 4 years. So 2023 to 2024, a small decrease, okay, 1% because we built a lot. And 2022 to 2023, 2.5% decrease. But before that, that was COVID, okay, and after COVID. Okay, so we are looking at rent decreasing, but I don't think it will continue in the future, okay, because of the slowdown, significant slowdown of the development activities during the last 2 years. So next, what I want to do is to compare Charlotte with a set of other cities. We do this, compare Charlotte first with like regional cities, right? So the regional cities we chose are Asheville, Charleston, Columbia, Greensboro, Raleigh, Richmond, and Spartanburg. So first, in terms of house prices, okay, so we are in the middle, okay, so not too crazy. Raleigh obviously has high price, and then Charlotte has pretty high growth rate. Okay, so this is based on the census data, so the data will look a little bit different than the micro data we had from Canopy. But still, we are on the high end in terms of growth rate. And of course, if you compare Charlotte with the national cities we chose, Atlanta, Austin, Cincinnati, Denver, Indianapolis, Memphis, Nashville, Portland, Sacramento, San Antonio, and Tampa, Charlotte is here. Of course, it's not among the highest, but we are getting there. Okay, so when Richard did this in 2019, Charlotte was the three lowest, had the three lowest prices among this pack. Okay, so I also want to draw your attention to this city, Austin, where the price is actually decreasing. Okay, so this is the only city that we see a decrease in prices. You probably read a lot of headlines about Austin prices are changing. Okay, it is. Okay, there is a reason for that. Okay, I will tell you a little bit later. So the other thing to look at affordability is one metric we always use is the median multiple or price to income ratio, which is defined as the area median house price divided by the area median household income. Okay, the conventional wisdom was if it's below 3, it's affordable. If it's between 3 and 4, not so much, but it's above 4, certainly not affordable. So this was meaningful when we started the first report because Charlotte was still less than 3.5. So we would say, okay, we are still in the middle, but since 2021, it has always been above 4. And this year, it's above 4.5. Okay, again, we are among the highest in the region. Okay, Asheville is, of course, an outlier because it's different. A lot of vacation homes, tourism-driven prices, right? And if we compare this with the national competitive cities, right? We are, of course, not the highest. We have Denver, we have Sacramento, right? But do we want to be like Denver or Sacramento in terms of housing affordability? So I don't want be like that certainly. And again, if you look at the price to income ratio from Austin, this is the city that see a decrease in that. Okay, so this is one way to look at it, the affordability. Okay, so if we do not do anything, my guess is we're probably going to be sometime very close to 5. Now, I want to do a case study just to compare Charlotte with Austin. Okay, so for the previous several years, I mean, the pattern was similar. Okay, both Charlotte and Austin saw very strong demand, increasing demand, people moving to those cities, and supply was somewhat limited and pushed up the prices. Right? Charlotte during the COVID era, price increased over the 2.5 year. Price increased somewhere between 50 to 55%. Austin a little bit more than that even. Okay, but since last year, Austin price has been decreasing a little bit. Charlotte not so much. Okay, of course you can say, okay, there's a lot of oversupply in Austin, but why? Okay, so here what I'm plotting is total permits. Okay, but the permits is the number of permits is reported at the CBSA level instead of MSA level, so it's slightly different geographic concept, but these two are comparable, Charlotte CBSA, Austin CBSA. And also, Austin is smaller than Charlotte in terms of population. Okay? But this is the housing permits that we saw. Okay? So for like the first part of this plot, they're similar, but Austin consistently had more permits than Charlotte. Okay? Well, look at recent years. Austin just built a lot more to accommodate that growth. Okay? Of course, in these, people will say, okay, let's break it down into owner-occupied, single-family, and multifamily stuff. Okay, so if you look at single-family, not so much. They're similar. Of course, if you scale by population, Austin still does a lot more than Charlotte. But if you look at raw number, not so much difference. Of course, they did better, still did better in the COVID years. Okay, but not so much in 2020. This is for the multifamily stuff. All right? Huge difference. Okay? Austin, in recent years, built 2 times more than Charlotte. Okay? So, of course, this might not be good news for multifamily developers out there. I know you guys are suffering, but this is not bad news for housing affordability. We are seeing even owner-occupied house price decreasing, even though this is building up mostly multifamily stuff. It helps. Okay, so this is what I always say, at this stage, any supply is good supply. Be it affordable housing supply, luxury supply, as long as we are adding more housing units to the market, it helps. Because there is just a strong demand for that. If you do not have enough supply, whatever housing units built out there, the price will be bid up. You just need more supply. Okay? But again, this is what I'm going to leave with it, is people, again, always ask, how do we get more supply? Or how do we try to solve this housing affordability issue? I have 2 answers. One is extremely simple. Just build more houses. The other one is the difficult part. How to build more houses. How? We have all these constraints, right? We have infrastructure problem, we have regulation, we have NIMBYism. It takes all of us, takes the community, takes the government, takes the private sector to first realize this is a problem. And then think about how to solve this problem collectively. With that, that's my presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Chu. That was really enlightening. And, you know, I did have the joy of doing the very first one of these. And then I left to go work somewhere else for a few years and came back. And in the intervening 4 times, I left you in pretty good shape. I don't know what you did in the interim. Just kidding. Also, houses are expensive here. Obviously not your fault at all. So we do want to take a few minutes to let there be Q&A from the audience. I'm going to start with one we got from the Zoom. And I'll ask that, and then we'll open it up to the community. So the question is, what impact would the COVID-19 pandemic in 2021 have had on the household size? Did that, in and of itself, contribute to the decline in household size?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons is because a lot of people actually moved to this area from New York. You can see literally a lot of people moved from New York. Most of them are young single professionals moved here. So it's mostly because of people moving in that are changing. It's not like everybody else living here kicking out their kids or whatever. No, it's not. It's like people moving in are mostly single.
Fantastic. So we'll take a question from the audience. We got first person right here.
I'm wondering what the impact for those of us who were lucky and got in at the very low interest rates. There's going to be, much less incentive for us to want to sell our home when naturally families might decide to sell. Maybe now they're going to not decide to sell for a long time because when are they ever going to get that rate again? So what impact do you think that will have long term?
So that's last year I actually talked about that because I'm in exactly the same situation. Not that I want to move anywhere, but I love my 2.875% mortgage. Who doesn't? But there's got to be a solution if somebody is willing to do it because, for example, if I really wanted to move, right, I'm willing to, there is a gain, then I'm willing to probably pay slightly higher interest rate, but certainly not 7.5. There should be some intermediary willing to do that because there is a gain to be made, right? Because lock in and not taking the great opportunity somewhere else is destroying the value that can be created. But I'm not sure there is going to be a lot of burden or a lot of things that to overcome institutionally. But somebody with very deep pockets, if they want to do this, there should still be something to do it, right? And giving $10,000 whoever want to refinance, that doesn't solve the problem. That was President Biden's proposal, by the way. Yeah.
What role do you think like Airbnbs might be having in terms of housing affordability? Because that's a lot of existing housing stock that is no longer available for purchase. Is it negligible? Do you see it increasing? Or is it actually something that is quantifiable?
I don't think it has a huge impact. Right? People always make rational decisions whether I want to rent it out or I want to keep it. I just don't, the size of that sector is small. And sometimes it probably even helps because you get income from that. So I'm not against that.
So we've got a couple of questions that came in from Zoom that are related to the data you showed on Austin. So let me throw them, I'm going to kind of combine them. But the first part of the question is, does Austin just have more land than us? Is there more developable land there?
Yes and no. My impression is if you really want to do it, when I say you, meaning everybody involved, there's always land. I still don't think in most US cities, like the raw land itself is the biggest roadblock for development. The biggest block is whether you can use that piece of land to do something, or what kind of things you can do with that piece of land. I mean, I see lots of vacant land, but my guess is you cannot develop single-family houses or apartments on those land. That's the problem.
And so kind of related to that, the second part of the question is, what are the demographics of people moving to Austin versus Charlotte? I don't know that I know that.
I don't have the data, but my guess is, I mean, in terms of age, probably similar.
Yeah.
But Austin has a lot of like the high-tech jobs, so they're probably better paid than a lot of people that move into Charlotte.
Yeah, they're both trendy, hip cities, and of course, the people who move here are better looking. We know that. Up there.
Curious, and I may have missed this earlier, but what was the scope of the study area? Because as a home builder, we're continuing to go further and further out to try to, we focus on workforce housing, and we find ourselves looking at places like Cleveland County and Stanley County and Catawba County. And I'm not sure if those are in your study area, but I think that's where you're going to start to find the attainable housing being built.
Yeah. So for the first part, the macro, it's at the MSA level. So that's the 14 county that's included in the MSA. And for the more micro level, the affordability kind of stuff that I used is for I think it's the 8 county, so Mecklenburg County, and the 7 counties bordering Mecklenburg County. So Cleveland County is not in there.
So I have a two-part question. The first one is, short term, what is that like nerve point interest rate lower than 7.5 that would spark the market to increase sales? And the second part of the question is, long term, at what point would the interest rate get to that would potentially stop the market or halt it or slow it down substantially?
I don't know. So as of right now, I do not see that the interest rate will go much lower very fast. And in terms of the high end, I mean, if you have 10% interest rate, I'm not sure how many people will want to buy anymore. But of course, I could be wrong, because before, if in 2021 you tell me that you're going to buy a house with 7.5% interest rate, I would say no. But obviously, a lot of people did. Right? It's just very hard to say.
Is this data trickling down to like zoning in Mecklenburg County? Because I'm just a small developer builder. I only add about 25 units to the market per year, mostly luxury and some in between. But as of June 1st, with UDO and some explanation of, oh, this is supposed to expand some things here, I mean, it's taking me up to 3 and 4 months sometimes to pull a single family permit to move forward. So something's got to change on our end. I mean, there's general contractors waiting around to like put food on their table to frame the houses and things. So just wondering if this data is getting down there.
So again, so that's the harder question to answer, is to how to build more houses, right? So I always say there are a lot of things that prevents us from building more, which is what we needed. One of the things is, of course, regulation. I think the city knows it, and where's Allison? She knows it. They are trying to find solutions to make it easier to go through the process. That's my guess, right?
Yeah, I think it's fair to also say, though, that the type data we work with doesn't lend itself to attribution. So we can't really say it's specifically something like the UDO or some component of the UDO that causes it. What we can look at is more macro level data And so we can't really get to that attributional level. We'll leave that up to the folks actually on the ground day to day. Right here, we got somebody.
I'll try to talk loud. So back to your comment and the analysis here, while you can't attribute cost to specific sources, if you can break it out between interest rate changes, which you showed in your affordability chart, interest rate changes versus cost, which is a totally separate component to the last question, and that affects multifamily and single family, or owner-occupied and renter-occupied. I know in the multifamily world, our expenses continue to rise rapidly, including bad debt. In fact, the National Apartment Association just released an article this afternoon that analyzes their 2023 data on the rising cost of operations, which totally ignores interest rates, which is a whole nother component. So if you could break that out, it would be helpful if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, I could.
So kind of along those same lines, while they get to the person up there, we had another question come in from Zoom and asking, is there data on the number or the share of cash sales relative to mortgage sales, mortgage finance sales in the data?
This data we don't have, but the center, the Childress Klein Center, has data that can answer that question. In recent years, the percent of cash sales has increased, mostly because of the institutional buyers that are coming.
Yep. I think we got somebody up
Yes.
right
So
there and then there.
question I had, right now we have a good number of apartments and multifamily being built. We have about 170 people coming to Charlotte every day. Do you think when the supply that's being built right now is finished, we'll have a surplus of apartments and increased vacancy?
I don't think so. So it just takes time for those apartments to be absorbed, given the kind of demand we see. So short term, you will feel like it's oversupplied. That's why rents are going down. But long term, I don't think that's the case, especially given over the next 2 or 3 years, you're probably going to see a lot less deliveries of apartment buildings.
I've got somebody at the back wanting to ask for a minute.
Hi. When the conversation of affordable housing comes up, the phrase of generational wealth also comes up. So as you mentioned earlier, a lot of people are going to be holding tight based off of that low rate environment that they have. But as the rates continue to rise, so is the equity position that people are holding. So there's also that phrase that says you only date your rate and you marry the house. So if that's the case, what do you think is going to have to happen for people to say, hey, the rate's not really what I'm concerned about. I need to tap in that equity so that we can continue that cycle of generational wealth?
I'm not sure I get your question. So are you asking with the lower rates, if you already have a house and then you locked in that lower rate mortgage, of course it will generate a lot of wealth going forward.
Only unless you tap into it. So to clear it up, if I'm a new home buyer, I might not want to buy a home because of those interest rates.
Yeah.
So if I am a current buyer or current owner, I don't want to sell because I might just be the wealthiest homeless person on the block. So the question is, what's going to make people start to sell so they can tap into that equity and start to make those homes available for other buyers to get into that circle?
Yeah, you gotta give them some incentive, right? But what I was trying to say when I answered the previous related question is there's nobody is trying to provide that incentive. Actually, there is gain to be made if somebody comes in, but I don't see anybody's doing that. I don't know. I mean, if you ask me, are you going to sell your house? My answer would be no. Why? 2.875 again.
Yeah. Yep. Got one up there?
Yeah. Hi, thank you. So I was just curious to know if we increase like supply, and if Charlotte starts to build an increased supply of single family and multifamily rentals, how would that affect the prices, the home values, and the apartment and rental rates here in Charlotte? As you've shown in Austin decreasing.
Two scenarios. First, prices will not increase as fast, or price will decrease. Right? So when supply goes up, price goes down. If everything holds out constant. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going? With a large chunk of the Charlotte MSA construction labor force is serviced by a lot of legal migrants and legal migrants. And with the new president elected in town, and how will that affect the construction labor force? Do you think that will push prices up higher? Or do you think what's going to happen? How is it going to trickle in the system?
So I have an answer for that because a professor at UW-Madison, which is where I graduated, they did a paper, I think it's last year. They actually found, not predicting, what they found is when some local government tighten immigration that reduces construction labor, the prices of the house prices increase in those areas.
And to be clear, that was both legal and illegal immigration.
Both
So
legal
it's either
and
type
illegal.
Of immigration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a question right here.
Yeah, just a quick question. When you say that more than half of the Charlotte region can't afford the lowest 10th percentile of houses, do you have a rough estimate of what those costs are in the 10th percentile of those houses?
Yes, we do. It should be in the report. Yeah. My guess is around 200,000.
Yeah.
I had a question. You mentioned, how does vacancy rates tie into affordability? If there's a ton of vacancies now, how can we determine whether that's because things are not affordable or if there's just a surplus?
So there are many different reasons for vacancies. So for example, the kind of for rent vacancy I'm showing here, a lot of that is just, these are new apartments. It just takes time to be leased out. And then they also count vacation homes. A lot of these vacancies are actually not on the market. Very small percentage are on the market. So it doesn't really affect anything at this point.
All right, well, I think that might be the end of our questions then. So thank you, Dr. Chu, for a great
Thank you.
presentation. We really appreciate it.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the industrial panel discussion as the second part of the State of Housing in Charlotte Summit. Let me now introduce the moderator of today's panel, Dr. Richard Buttimer. Dr. Richard Buttimer just joined us as the Dean of the Bell College of Business, but he's certainly not new. He was here when I joined. He actually hired me, and he left. Richard joined UNF in 2020 as the Dean of the Business College there. Before that, he was the John Crosland Senior Distinguished Professor of Real Estate and Development here at UNC Charlotte, and the Director of the Childress Klein Center for Real Estate. That's my job right now. Earlier in his career, he was the Good Mayfield Scholar in Real Estate and Director of the Real Estate Master's Program at University of Texas, Arlington. He also served on the Board of Directors of the American Real Estate and Urban Economics Association. So please welcome Dean Richard Buttimer.
Thank you, Dr. Chu, and it's great to be here today and have an opportunity to really talk in depth about some of the issues that the State of Housing Report has just given us. So I want to start by introducing our panelists. And so I'll start by introducing Charisma Sutherland, who serves as the 2024 president of Canopy Realtors Association and Canopy MLS. They're a sponsor of this program, and we are deeply grateful for their support, especially in terms of data. We could not do this without their support. She has been a realtor and a broker in North and South Carolina for more than 20 years and currently works with the Allen Tate Company. Thank you for joining us, Charisma. I got to say, go Niners. She is a UNC Charlotte alum, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then just kind of going down the seating order here, I'd like to welcome Marcy Williams. Marcy is a highly accomplished multifamily executive with over 30 years of experience. She's a multifamily strategic advisor for RKW Residential, where she was formerly CEO. She has been deeply involved with Greater Charlotte Apartment Association, and Marcy also serves on the board of the Childress Klein Center for Real Estate. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts as well, Marcy.
Thanks.
And then finally, but not least, let me introduce Bart Hopper. He has over 3 decades leading in developing commercial, retail, and residential real estate. Bart is the CEO of Hopper Communities. He has worked on a number of remarkable projects in town, including the Bank of America Corporate Center, and also co-founded New South Properties of the Carolinas. So welcome, Bart.
Thank you.
So before we get started with the actual questions, I do want to remind our audience we will have about 10 minutes at the end of this session for audience Q&A. So if you hold your questions till then, we'll get to you as we get to that part of the presentation. So I think the best place to start is just to get each of you to reflect on what you saw today in the presentation, and really what stood out to you, and do the conclusions from the report correspond with what you are seeing in your various sectors of the industry. And we'll just start with Bart and kind of work our way down the audience.
Yeah, thank you. It was very enlightening. I'm getting a lot of market data thrown at me. Also, we do a quarterly Zonda meeting. So we did that last Thursday, and I got a lot of information, and then we got the honor of hearing more from you today. In terms of affordable housing, it just, if you're, I kind of had to Google, what is affordable? Because you hear it all the time. Well, it's 30, it's basically it's the kind of the definition, which I just kind of figured out, is 30% of your gross income, or your income. And that probably doesn't include if you have a bunch of car loans and other debt. So, in Charlotte, if we're, Greater Charlotte area, which includes those 7 counties, is somewhere around $80,000, and there's 30%. Well, we could do a lot more in 2010, 2011, when housing was so much lower coming in after the Great Recession with that money than what you can buy today. So it just causes a problem. So what we're seeing is we do a couple different things, but one thing we do is build kind of more infill townhomes near and around Charlotte, and maybe Loso, used to be South End for it. That got too pricey. North End, and those are priced in the $500,000 to $700,000 range, depending on if you buy the smaller or larger product, 17 to 2,200 square feet. Well, those are pretty expensive in this market. So there's buyers out there, but it's a more finite number of buyers available in that. And then as it goes up, it becomes more finite. Now, a lot of our buyers are first-time buyers, so it's just hard to qualify. What we're seeing a lot more, and what we're doing and more, is something we talked about, is developing larger sites for third-party, national, regional, large builders in kind of what I'd say the 45-minute, maybe we'll squeeze it out to 50 if they've got good sewer and stuff, and developing out there. We've got a 360-unit project in York that we're doing for D.R. Horton. We've got another one in, you said Cleveland County wasn't part of the area because maybe it was too far down South Carolina. We might want to add it because, it's 50 minutes away. And we're doing a 600 unit single family townhome development there. And you can just get so much more affordability. Again, remembering what the definition of affordable is, 30% income. And, you can do, Mark Boyce is in here. He knows this way better than I do. You can get a lot more value, a lot more, it's further out. Yes, but at least you can afford a house if you want to buy one. And a townhome especially. I mean, some of the projects we're working on, we're able to get pricing down to, high 200s for townhomes, single family in the low mid 300s. That's affordable. But that's what I'm seeing, a lot more of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. One thing I'd point out when we talk about affordability and the way we define it is exactly what you're saying. It's what somebody can afford based on their income. Now, the challenge we have as researchers is we don't see what assets they're bringing to the table beforehand. So somebody might have a low income, but they've moved from another region, so they have a lot of equity they're bringing in. So we understand the data can't tell us that. We just don't have that individual level data. But the definition you're describing is exactly right. It's what you can afford based on 30% of your income, which is actually a definition the federal government and many, many other organizations use. So that's why we choose that particular number. So, Marcy, how about you?
Yeah, I thought what Dr. Chu said was spot on. I've got a little bit more detailed information from that, but I will tell you in the beginning, right in April of this year, I had a really State of the Union call with all of our team members, and we have over about 500 team members, and some of them are doing anybody from a groundskeeper to a leasing consultant, and really 80% of the workforce is really working on site. And a lot of those people are new to our industry and had never had this pressure, this rent compression, even though it's at 1%, or I've got it 1.2% of the asking rent growth is negative. Just coming out of COVID, where rents were increasing 15 to 25%, and the company really also operates in Florida, where rents were upwards of 40% rent growth. So everybody was, you want an apartment, you better take it now because the rent's going to go up. Now things have shifted. So really had a conversation with the teams, a town hall, to say, demand is at an all-time high, which is what you said. Excellent. The great news. Well, guess what? So is supply. And because of that, that is why rents are stable and in Charlotte coming down a little bit. On top of a lot of the multifamily assets that have been developed are giving away concessions. And that could be anywhere from 6 weeks free to 2 months rent for free on a 13 or a 14-month lease. So I definitely concur with what you're saying. Just to give a little bit more detail, in the past 12 months, there have actually been 15,478 units that have been delivered. and over 12,000, about 12,600 of those have been absorbed. So to your point, Dr. Chu, yes, you've got the demand, and yes, you have the absorption, but because there's that delta, those prices are stagnant at best. And then coming down in some of the more populated areas where there's a high growth that's being built right now. Along the light rail is where that is. And then, but in the outlying counties, those rents are going up a little bit because there's not as much growth there. So when you mentioned, Bart, about, people will drive to buy, they don't drive to rent. That's the challenge. So they're only going to go so far to get out there to rent the home or rent the multifamily unit. But from your perspective, and that makes perfect sense, they'll drive to buy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Rizma, what are you seeing in the residential markets?
Well, Dr. Chu, your presentation was great. I'm a little sad with a little bit of the news you gave us about the deficit, and that rates will be going up is what you somewhat are predicting in the future. I'm sure my realtor family is a little sad to hear that a little bit, because one of the things about this presentation that really stood out is we are seeing subtle improvements in the market. We're seeing some buyer and seller activity up. So when you're talking about affordability, it has everything somewhat to do with the rates. So that we know that 6%, somewhere in the 6% range, is a sweet spot for buyers, and we're finding out it's a sweet spot even for sellers. Even if some people don't want to get rid of their 2.8 or 3% interest rate, they might be willing to move because they have so much equity, but it has to be at that certain rate that they're willing to pay. So we saw this as realtors back all the way to September of 2023, when rates at one particular day might have got right under 8% at a given time in the high 7s. So we can see the difference. When you go into the 6 range somewhere, buyers will begin to mobilize, and so will sellers. So interest rates are very important.
And let me follow up on that, because one of the things that, of course, happens is, somebody's locked into that great 2.8% rate for a number of years. They do actually build up equity.
Mm-hmm.
And so the person who went into that home with that great rate at maybe an 80% LTV, by the time they're ready to, 5-10 years later, contemplate a move, they might be going in at a 50% LTV, which puts them in even if the overall rates are at 8%, at that very low LTV, they might be at 6%. So are you seeing people make that move where it's an equity? They got a lot of equity and they can now make the move even in the face of high rates?
Yes, I am seeing that. And my husband and I might be one of the ones, 2.25 rate, 2.25, 15-year fix, okay? Ooh. So we are actually thinking about should we move or not, but we have a great amount of equity built up. So it makes the roll a little bit easier. And other people are also considering that move with the equity. If it's what they want, and we have people that are starting to downsize, getting into a different age range, needing different homes, things on one level. So the needs are always out there for people to be able to sell. The rate is not going to keep everybody in their homes. Yeah. So you will see people still moving out of those 2.25, 2.5, 3% interest rates.
Yeah, absolutely. So Marcy, let me come back to you. When we did the first State of Housing report in 2019, and I think really since then, there's been this constant theme that we're not producing enough supply. And this year, a little bit last year, we actually saw that trending a little differently in the, certainly in the apartment world. If we want to see that continue, what are the structural constraints you see and the big risk you see for being able to continue to, in essence, build our way out of the affordability challenge?
I think the challenges that the developers and builders are experiencing today, Dr. Chu talked about as well, about how long it takes to get permits and some zoning issues that are having, or the NIMBYism, we'll want to build something out into the suburbs, but the neighborhoods don't want that. And so that's really a challenge. But, how do you build your way out of it? We know that real estate is cyclical. I've been in this business for a long time and seen where the rates, believe it or not, like in Uptown, back during the financial crisis, a 1-bedroom was $700, and that was the cheapest that you were ever really gonna ever get that. And today that same one probably rents for double at best. So from an affordability standpoint, I think the developers and builders are gonna have a challenge that is not going to go away anytime soon. So what does that mean for affordability for the renters? Again, like I said, they're only going to go so far out, but what it does do is it attracts more people into Charlotte because the rates here are still cheaper. Then that's why there was so much movement during COVID. My daughter lives in New York. She lives in the East Village, her apartment. It's not even 400 square feet, and she's paying $3,200 for that. Now she thinks that's the best apartment she ever had. It's amazing. There's only roaches every once in a while. They've kind of gone down a little bit, but if she took that same $3,200 and came here, she could certainly, be living the high life. So I think that's really, when you look at what the rates are, how do you solve it from, county to county, or, from South End and Loso up into Mooresville and Huntersville, I think that's still going to be a challenge, but the rates are still attractive and, double-digit percentage lower here than where other cities are today.
So kind of following up with that, and this will really be for both of you,
Yeah.
and sorry, it's not a scripted question, but
Yeah.
something I want to follow up on is, we've talked a lot about interest rates. Doesn't look like we're going to see a big drop in mortgage rates. Interest rates matter a lot for developers. And if you're trying to do a project like an apartment project or a large-scale residential single-family project, how does interest rates play into that to the development side?
Good question. Just a little bit. It helps, if we had been borrowing money at, I'm making up numbers, at $10 million to build something, and I was paying 5% maybe for that money with a bank or whatever, and now we're paying 10%. That's the interest, but that's kind of the tail wagging the dog. What we really need to do is have our product sell at what we pro forma it at, or close there too. So, because if you ain't selling, it doesn't matter what your interest rate is, you got problems. So, that's a good point. And I was thinking more about affordability. Again, getting back out to these surrounding areas is where the value is. And one thing that builders can do that, an existing homeowner, when he's selling his house, is that, they provide serious incentives. I mean, I'm sitting there looking at the charts today, and it's, well, we've had only a 2 or 3% uptick in the cost of homes. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, I just had lunch with a national builder guy who says on a $350,000 house, they provided $30,000 to buy the loan down from 6.5 to 4. I mean, that's real money off the top. So, I mean, but if you're looking, that helps. That's another way, and that's why new home sales are going up. And finally, exactly, the line's kind of crossed where existing homes are actually starting to go ahead of the new home construction because nobody's moving. I mean, I looked at a stat in Zonda the other day. They sent out nationally 76% of the existing homes in the United States have mortgage rates of about 5%. Now, your mortgage, 2.25%, I'd be scared to get rid of that.
Our financial planner
Maybe you
told me
can
to
rent
hold
it. Maybe you can rent it out.
That's
RKW can help you lease it or something.
That's it. My planner said keep it forever.
Yeah, I'd do that.
But there's still, there are 26,000 multifamily units under construction right now. And half of those are going to deliver in the next 12 months. So the absorption is not going to meet the supply in 2025. It was, thrive in 2025. And, it's like, I don't know, pick up sticks in 26. I don't know. But, it's definitely, it's going to get there. It's not, I think, people in the multifamily world thought that 2025 was going to be the sweet spot, and now that's really in Charlotte. That's going to go into 26 and 27 before absorption and supply meet, and then rents will stabilize and then start to increase. But because starts are down 40% right now, so which is
just kind of adding on to that. Actually, Marcy's group. Manage and lease. We've got 3 townhome projects that we decided to build for rent a couple of years ago when all these things were skyrocketing up in terms of rents. Well, the rents are going down, so also, you'll hear a rental rate of we're doing, $2,500 a month on, a good, nice, ours are like townhomes that are basically 3 bedroom, 3.5 bath, brand new. But, Marcia said, well, to get that lease bought, we're going to have to, on a 12-month lease, we're going to have to give them a month free. Free. And then 15 months, we kind of got to go to 6 weeks. And 18 months, we might need to go to 2 months. Run those numbers. That's why nobody's building any new ones either, because nobody, it just doesn't pencil out when you, run the numbers, and no lender's going to do it. So that kind of, I don't know how much. I guess some of that is factored in when they come up with what the rental rates are, unlike maybe some of the housing pricing. But it's, it's not. I think we can take if I take a townhome community with 50 or 60 units, and build it and sell it. By the time I get my rents, what I can actually market and get them rented for, and I try to sell that with these higher cap rates, I'm not going to make near the money on a per unit basis than if I take those units and sell them off onesie twosie. I mean, even if my price is lower, it's still going to be, you know, way ahead of the game.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, Chris, let me ask you a question. So the report shows the single-family market continues to be very tight, median days on the market being about 20 days. How do you advise clients when it comes to the sales process now? How quick do they have to be? I'm assuming pretty darn, but, you know, what do you tell them?
Well, so first of all, you guys speak in median days on market, and we speak in average days on market. So our October data shows that we're about 38 days on market. That's just a little bit over a month. Researching our National Association of Realtors, nationally throughout the country, they have 4.3 months supply.
Wow.
So just to compare that to Charlotte, to show that our inventory is still small, and even though people think we are in a buyer's market, we are not. We are still in a seller's market with 38 days on market. So I want that to be very clear today. Because I do have the media, they call and they ask those questions all the time. Just because we're not 2 days on the market, as you spoke about, does not mean we are in a buyer's market. So some of the things that we try to tell people is basically get your ducks in a row, get your matters in order if you're going to buy or sell. Meaning, get your financing in place, be more decisive. Because like you all said, you might have to go out further. And you have to set your expectations to be real. I have a lot of people that have just decided, have been working 20 and 25 years in Charlotte, and they're like, oh, okay, I've been renting for 25 years. I want to buy a home in Charlotte. They remember old Charlotte. They've lived here and rented.
Yep.
And they were like, but I make great money. And I'm going to tell you what they say they make. They're like, I make $80,000, $85,000 a year. Well, you just showed us the numbers. The numbers don't lie. You can't afford to live in Charlotte.
Yeah.
And that's
exactly right.
That's a tough conversation. They feel like you're not doing your job and looking hard enough.
And undoubtedly they're looking at you and saying it's your fault, not this is the whole market.
So we tell people also be flexible, because some sellers did not want to list their home last year or the year before because you had 3 days on the market. So even though we say, oh, it worked in the seller's factor to put your home, it really wasn't. People said it was too quick. So the 38 days on the market is helping some sellers to say, okay, I can do this. I can go under contract. 38 days on the market gives me time to do whatever I need to do. So we're telling buyers, even be flexible with the dates. Maybe you have to lease back to the sellers, you know, the homes, to give them some time. And it's also telling the sellers, be ready to see if we can come up with a game plan. But no matter what, we still are I believe in generational wealth. And I believe that real estate is the best way to get generational wealth. So I stand on that firmly. So I always tell people, always choose to purchase and buy. Just do it.
If you're not going to rent.
If you're not going to rent.
I'm just.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I get it.
If you can buy.
But I don't want people to keep paying her loans down. You know what I'm saying?
No.
You know.
No, I'm kidding.
Throw down going here.
I'm sorry.
Let me get your daughter here from New York.
Yeah,
I'm
there you
say,
go.
Stop paying that high price. No, seriously, we want you to pay your own mortgage down, because that is how you will create equity and wealth.
So one of the kind of pieces that I'm kind of curious about is, I remember when I got my first loan, I went to a bank in the relatively simple process. Today, people have a lot of options for their mortgage. Where are you seeing people go? Banks, credit unions, non-bank lenders. Where are you seeing most of the funding coming for residential loans?
Well, we pulled our stats just for the month of October. We still had 79% of buyers doing loans.
Okay.
And about 20% doing cash. People are doing different from conventional, FHA, VA, different, still those types of loans. But we are seeing all different types. I don't have all the stats where everything is at, but people are looking for the best rates. Some people are going to credit unions, and some people are going to mortgage brokers, but people are learning to shop to get the best loan they can for the best rate and terms.
Yeah. There's just so much information today out on the internet and stuff.
Yeah, without a doubt. So let me ask you, Bart, a question. It's really for everybody at some point, but you know, as we think about some of the structural issues around development, one of the things, of course, is the city introduced a new Unified Development Ordinance last year. And, you know, I think one of its intentions was to streamline development process, really to reduce costs, because we know if we can reduce costs to development, that makes housing more affordable. As somebody that's actively involved in development, how's it going? What are you seeing so far? And then is it helping, or is it too soon to say yet? I know there's some modifications that are actually being contemplated for it, but what do you see as the primary challenges in that respect for the region, for the city at least?
Where do I start?
I like to ask a very simple question for people to chew on.
So I certainly think the UDO and our city's getting a lot bigger, and the idea of streamlining, the intentions are good. But anytime you do something, you know, you do something, especially as big as this. I mean, I don't know because I haven't looked at it. I'm going to tell you that closely. But my engineer reminds me that the new DO is about 600, 700 pages. You know, they've already had to do, you know, 5 text amendments. I'm not an engineer, thank goodness. If any of you young people are in school and want to get a job and know there's some job opportunities out there, engineering and surveying, that's where it's at. Because, you know, the new DO, it's a work in progress. But drawings, our drawings take, if we got a set of engineered drawings, if it used to take, I mean, back in the, I don't want to date myself, but back in the old days, you could get something approved in, you know, 90 days, a whole set of engineering to do a subdivision. Then it was 6 or 8 months. I'd say now it's, you know, 10 to 12 months, but it could be, you know, we've had a lot of them that are longer. I mean, staff is just overwhelmed, and it's a lot of that. I think they're kind of learning with the engineering industry, our industry, you know, what to do, and you know, and then, you know, everybody's trying to make changes to simplify it. It's a work in progress, but you know, right now it's more expensive right now. You know, all of a sudden with the new tree ordinance, you know, you've got to literally go out and survey basically get a surveyor to go out and survey every tree. Well, you know, a certain inch, and you don't know on the property as part of the tree save ordinance, and so we, you know, our surveyor will. We got a 10-acre site, you know, it's full of trees. Well, yeah, we're in Charlotte. We got a lot of trees, right? And that's a good thing. But, you know, hey, I can't give you a quote to do that work. I go, well, what do you mean? I can't give you a quote. I don't know how many trees, what size, what heritage, non-heritage, what qualifies, what, you know. So they just say, we'll send our surveyor team out there, and we'll just charge you per day. Hey, hold your breath and see what happens. So that's kind of what we do. Now, the good news is, rezonings, I do think those are going way down, you know, because of the new ordinance. We've been able to just work within the by right. So that saves time, and a little bit of money on that side. But, you know, it's just, you know, everybody, we're all trying to kind of work together to come up with solutions. Just, hey, I'm just thankful I live in Charlotte and I've got things to work on. You know?
Absolutely.
I wouldn't know what else to do anyway. So,
what are you guys seeing on the apartment side? Has the UDO made a difference yet, or is it really too soon to tell? Or?
I'm not qualified to answer that. I think Bart probably has the right answer just from a management perspective. Sure. You know, it's usually the time and the cost. That's, you know, the developer saying, well, I wanted to have these rents, but now the cost of, you know, developing and building this is going up, so I need the rents to go up to, as Bart says, you know, make it pencil. But I think Bart probably said it best and is most qualified from my perspective.
Good. So, one final, I think we're getting close to our time to start going to the audience in a minute, but I do want to ask one final question of Charisma. So one of the things that came out of this is that, you know, affordability has been partially increased because residential rates came down a little bit, gone back up a little bit, but so Dr. Chu mentioned in his talk that, advising people, hey, don't expect to get back to 3-4%. Do you find buyers are sort of waiting to hope for those lower rates, or are people realistic and say this is probably the new normal? Because I got to tell you, as somebody who lived through the 1980s, I mean, I remember the 17 and 18%. I wasn't old enough to own a home then, but I do remember those rates, so 17, 18%. People still bought houses then. They refinanced them immediately, but I mean, are you seeing a large number of people who are there's sort of a pent-up demand waiting for rates to fall?
Well, yes and no. So let's just say in August, our buyer activity was down. When they heard the media talking about there will be a possibility of a rate cut in September, we saw the demand for buyer activity go up, probably double digits. So that's that. Do some people still believe they're going to get a 3% interest rate? They do. And I wish they could hear Dr. Chu say, it's probably not going to happen in his lifetime or mine. So again, and we're trying to help them really grasp that. So one of the things that we have taken on this year at Canopy is we have down payment resource. So it's called DPR. It's affectionately, we call it DPR, and it's like a Match.com eHarmony situation where we can match down payment assistance to the homes. We have over 2,000. This program services 2,000 national, local, or state programs to have affordability. And the home prices go up to $760,000. So Bart, that might be helpful for your community. And we're trying to inform people that this can get you off the sidelines. The rates are not going to probably be 3% again. But if we can get you down payment assistance, still have that nice low SO townhome that you might want, because you can go up to 760, and you said yours is between 500,000 and 700,000, so your property will fit in. It is so easy in our MLS. Every realtor has access to it. All the homes right there on your screen are matched right there, and you can see if down payment assistance is there.
It's tremendous. Great. Yeah, that's a tremendous.
How many realtors in here knew that even existed?
All of them.
Yes, my Canopy family.
Oh, that's tremendous. That is amazing, and certainly a great thing. I think that's one of the things we did get. I mean, you think about low interest rates, right? I mean, if you go back to 2007, we were at rates about like we have today, 5, 6, 7%. And then something really, really bad happens. We had the Great Recession, and we had the housing crash, and that dropped rates to 4 to 5%. What did it take to get to under 3? It was COVID. Yeah. You know what? I'm willing to make the trade-off for slightly higher interest rates to not have to go through COVID again, right? So, I mean, in one sense, we all do want to think about, we care deeply about our own personal mortgage rate, but very low interest rates like 2 and 3% for durable mortgages, that's a sign something's really off in the economy. And the fact we have higher rates really does mean we're getting more economic activity, and there's competing uses for that capital, and that's part of what's driving this, which is, it's always a two-edged, I'm an economist, right? So on one hand and then on the other hand, right? We got to kind of think about that.
Richard, I think what's interesting about what you said, I think, or Charisma, what you said is the education that you have to give and the down payment, and what Dr. Chu said, which is the non-families that are moving into Charlotte. It's like the non-family households that are coming, so singles or roommates or whatever is occurring, that has increased 35% since 2013. So it's not a lot of the dinks, the double income, no kids, and trying to, for an affordability standpoint. But I also think too, if the young people are coming, but the older people aren't leaving either. Yeah. So somewhere along the lines, that supply is going to come down. You're still going to have the demand, which is going to drive the rates, home rates up and rental rates up. You've got all of that because Charlotte's a great place to be.
Yeah.
So for young people and for older people. So I don't have any research. I just think from an interesting standpoint, we talk about now, but we know things are going to continue to move, and it's going to increase. It's still cheaper than everywhere. It's still cheaper than a lot of places, but it's tough now, but it's still great for the city in the future.
We see a lot of, just what they brought up, because what you said, we see a lot of them on our townhomes, because a lot of them are first-time buyers, young people moving in, like you're talking about. You know, we want to buy a townhouse, can't afford. We get a lot of parents that are helping out.
Yeah.
So if you've got, go ask your parent for a down payment. I bet the interest rate's even better.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. And you might get a babysitter with them too, right?
Yeah, that's right.
The thing we do keep in mind, right, if you have 100 people a day moving into the city, I do think they all get in front of me on I-277 and get lost. So, I blame them every time I'm in a traffic jam. But, I mean, with that growth, we know that Charlotte and Mecklenburg proper isn't absorbing all of that. Some of that's going into the surrounding counties, which is why we do a regional study. Charlotte has made a concerted effort, and I want to shout out to Allison Craig, who is one of our alums, has done a great job with this, with trying to really streamline the process. What do we see in the surrounding counties? I mean, they're not in the UDO. I mean, are they as eager to, help us with development, or are they saying, not us, stay in Mecklenburg?
I can't wait to answer that one. It's like the Wild Wild West. I mean, you don't act, so that's something to be thinking about. At least we've got a process, and we've got, here in Charlotte, you just don't know. I mean, some areas, especially these smaller municipalities, once the word gets out and all the national builders are coming in, it can get very frantic. You got local, usually it's local council members who, small town, all of a sudden all these, 400 houses in one little, they're just like, so they'll start changing their rules. Initially they'll be kind of, come on, we like the tax base. But then after, it doesn't take long for them to, start, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, we can't have this, we can't have that, and we may just say no, even if you are complying with everything. There's no law sometimes. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit.
Yeah.
But, I think folks that are dealing with it can tell you I'm not that far off base sometimes.
So the Charlotte metro area is a little unusual in that we span 2 states, right? I mean, there are other places to do it, but we're one of the few really big metro areas that do that. How big a difference do you see in development regulatory environments between South and North Carolina?
I don't know if I can, more about what, I don't build as much in South Carolina. We haven't built that much. I hear it's tougher, and then a lot of that gets down to the local city. Really that's where it can be. And again, that could be a lot more Wild Wild West too. I mean, some of my builders are talking about different areas. I'd rather build there than there and here. But I will say they all, don't complain as much. So I guess that's a positive on, Charlotte for the actual building of the units. Once you get it, a permit. As one guy said, getting a permit. That's especially on single family lots with the new stormwater changes. It gets very complicated.
Good. Well, I think with that, we're at the point where we want to transition to Q&A from the audience. So at this point, I would open it up and say, are there any questions from either the people who are here, or has anything come in on our Zoom feed that we'd like to ask? So if we have somebody right here on the very front. You can just stop and yell if you want.
Do that. Thank you. Appreciate that. Somebody had asked earlier about a green light and a red light with percentages, and I know that that's something that is hard to answer. But on the residential side of it, 8% is an emergency brake and an eject button, and 5% is a green light. And that's being realistic because at 5%, you're able to do the 2-1 buy downs. It makes lenders get competitive. It makes sellers get competitive. If you got something in the 5s and you get a 2-1 buy down, you're in the 3s. All right, now that's obviously going to deplete inventory and starting to raise housing prices. But you look at Cabarrus County, it's on hold right now with development if it's not already permitted, and that's because of the wastewater treatment development. So that's projected to be completed in 2027. Once that does, Cabarrus County's pissed that we're not growing right now. I mean, you know, we're of course we would help Mecklenburg grow. Let's grow. Oakboro, you guys just moved Charlotte Pipe and Foundry out to Oakboro. That's going to take 3,000 to 5,000 jobs out there. They don't have the residential capacity for that without development. Norwood and Tillery, you know, you've got all the lakes around here, Baden, even High Rock, Lake Norman, Wiley, Kings Mountain, all of that is overpopulated already. So that's why lots are ridiculous, and now they're just putting up all these multifamily dwellings everywhere. So people are looking at Norwood and Tillery. It's still affordable. Talking about affordable, and it's within a commute. I mean, just around and around. So I guess my main question is if you guys are going to keep putting up multifamily dwellings, places like Midland, all right, that's right outside of Cabarrus County, but it's Stanley County. It would be a easy commute right down 24, 27. The development started, and they started putting cookie cutter neighborhoods. They started putting houses that look just alike, everything out there. And the people don't want it, so they started changing the rules, like you said, because they're like, wait a minute, this isn't the type of growth that we were expecting. I think if someone came in and it was custom builds, or it was something unique, the lots are bigger, or, you know, in the price range where it's not high end or low end. We need that middle of the road. But people like uniqueness. If they're going to make that commute, they want a little bit of a yard. They don't want their house to look like everybody else's in the neighborhood. Just ideas, throwing around. I mean, investors such as yourself have the opportunity to get in with other investors and swap up that game plan for a profit.
Yeah, so let me make one shot, and then I'll let the people actually do this answer too. But yeah, I mean, you make a good point, right? That there are two different groups of people we're talking about, right? The people who already live there, a lot of times don't like the cookie cutter houses because they're not, you know, they're not as aesthetically pleasing. But the people who buy them like them because they can afford them, right? So there's two different groups of people you're trying to deal with, and I think it's for the local government. That's a real challenge, right? I mean, it's a real challenge to kind of weigh those two things. I'll turn it over to the panelists to go from there.
So I totally understand what you're saying, and I agree with it. You know, when I think of Midland, I think of, I'm from Midland, but it's Texas. But,
think of oil.
That Midland, you got to have sewer. It all start in all these places that we're talking about. You know, if you don't have public sewer, you can't get any kind of density. And you may know you want to hear it, but density is getting towards affordability. You know, and I think that's the main thing on the whole UDO, a lot of it to begin with. But all these things you said are nice, and I agree. Custom, when I think custom, I immediately think versus, you know, more of a production building. I think, well, there's money. Affordable went down. Bigger yard, well, there's more money. But just went down some more. I mean, to get to this affordable that we're talking about, or anywhere close to it, it's just hard to do. You know, it's hard to do. I mean, you know, builders, they're not in this, you know, you've got to make money. And even if a builder wanted to do it and not make money, well, you couldn't go get a lender to loan you any money to show them you're not going to make money. You know what I mean? You got to have value. You got to be able to show that you're creating value and making money. And if you can get these down, I mean, you know, not to pick on Mark, but he's out there and they're building a lot of houses and doing very well because it's good value. People want to go out there. It's a great spot. You're right. We couldn't find any land. We went to Locust and still sold like hotcakes, you know, with one of our builders out there. So, you know, and that gets back to, again, to the utilities. But I understand what you're saying. It's just sometimes it's harder, you know, to do than you might think, I guess is the best way to say it.
Quick, sorry about this. There's a specific piece of property that I have in mind here that will not be developable until that wastewater treatment plan is completed. But they made an exception. They said if executive homes were built there, which is acre plus homes, $1 million plus homes, to cater to the Lilly executives that are moving in at the pharmaceutical company there at Philip Morris, then they would allow development. Now, that's a little bit of
that can certainly create some political tensions in the
is.
city.
It
There's
is.
no doubt about that.
Right now, there's people ripped up about that. So
Yeah,
But-
I mean, I've heard that a lot of different places
Yeah.
like that, and it's
Yeah.
scary.
So let me ask, we've had a question come in from Zoom meeting, the cyberspace, that I think is a good one for the whole panel. What are your thoughts on the new development that's happening in West Charlotte and the River District? I mean, how do you see that affecting everything from single family to rentals to, the development itself?
I'm not personally all that involved in it, but I think it's great for Charlotte. I mean, it's just a well master planned, all kinds of different housing, commercial, retail. I mean, you've got, like Valentine, you just got a big old landscape to work with, and it was well thought out and done the whole thing. I think you've got you'll have affordability. I think it's awesome.
And then it will connect, obviously, Gastonia, Belmont, Mount Holly, closer into Charlotte. So I think it's a great thing.
I think it's well needed, and people are excited for it to be coming into the residential space. And from what I understand, it's the last big piece of land.
That's right.
Left
It's
in
a
Charlotte.
big old giant blank canvas. They
Yep.
don't have them anymore.
I think we have one more question up here, and then we'll have to call it a day, I think.
My question concerns the regulatory environment that I think y'all are all kind of encountering. So from our perspective as an attorney in land use, one of the things we've come across is the desire for a lot of the staff inside the municipalities to impose community impact fees, mandatory impact fees, trying to do mandatory inclusionary zoning, forcing affordability onto those things, even though every single one of those things is illegal, and the state of North Carolina does not allow it. They're still trying to do it. In addition, there seems to be, like you said, a wild, wild west mentality once you walk outside of Charlotte, where I think a lot of these folks are saying, well, sue us if you think what we're doing is illegal. And nobody wants to sue the town if you're an individual developer, but I want to give a lot of shout out to Rob Nanfelt and Rebick and their team for trying to help hold some of those folks accountable. But to a certain extent, can you all comment real quick about how what you've encountered from a regulatory space? Because I agree, I think that the zoning issues are important because those are legitimate legislative concerns that come before town boards and whether or not they're going to vote to amend their map. But those pressures have seemed to seep down into the staff level, and we see staff more and more comfortable with more and more illegal requests and more types of requests that are outside the bounds of what they should be doing. And how do y'all, have you encountered that, and have you seen that, and what do you suggest, or are there suggestions or things that you've done that works, or what do you think should be done on the industry level to help y'all push back on some of those over-regulatory burdens as well as illegal regulatory burdens?
Well, don't look at me.
Well, I don't know that I have a response on the illegal regulatory burdens because I'm just not doing that. I mean, I'm not doing anything illegal, hopefully, but also I'm not applying for anything. So I do think that it's always a challenge for, an ordinance gets passed, but it's up to staff to interpret it. And sometimes it's not clear.
Are we
And
talking Charlotte, or are we talking everywhere? I feel like here in Charlotte, there's a little more order to the whole thing. We don't know, the laws are changing a little bit, but at least there's attempts. It just depends on where you are. What area you're talking about. I don't really have lots of areas we go and work, couldn't be any better. It goes a lot quicker than Charlotte, and you've got approvals quickly, and there's not a lot of that problem. I do feel like the more a smaller community, again, has sewer, right? I mean, that's why they all jump to spots. The more development that comes in, the more they start having a bigger wish list. Executive housing always seems to come out, like you said, after a little bit of time. Things like that. It's just all different, As my dad used to say, Bart, if it's easy, everybody be doing it. So, we just go out there and do the best we can. I've learned to kind of tuck my tail and run quicker than I might have back in the old days, because you just know in some places it's just not going to happen.
Well, with that, we got about 1 minute left. So let me ask each of the panelists just to give a final set of thoughts and we'll wrap up. So why don't we start with Charisma at the far end?
Well, don't give me a mic, and I'm going to make my spiel. So I'm going to take my opportunity. We have some government people in here. I don't know if Rob Nanfield is in here. If you are, just raise your hand. Okay, shout out to him again. But one of the things I like to say, it would be great if we can see a significant difference in expanding the homestead exemption, so we can increase income qualification and lower the age threshold. That would be really great. Retrofit some of these existing commercial buildings. If we can do that, allow some flexibility code with this. And let's see if we can get some incentives built in and do some LIHTC building to help. And let's amend some of the Housing Authority Acts. So moving some set-asides. And let's expand the use of our accessory dwellings. So if we can do those things, and you already spoke about the local regulatory burdens, and I think we've talked about that enough, that would be really helpful to help the Charlotte and surrounding counties.
Fantastic. Thank you. Marcy?
I don't have any pleas out there except to say, you know, multifamily housing obviously is important to the city, and it's important to the people that are moving here, and it's a great option if you're not able to afford the housing. And again, overall, the average rents in Charlotte are at $1,610 right now, which is 7% lower than the national average. Now, 5 years ago, it was 10% lower than the national average. But you know, what's being built right now, as I mentioned, about 80% is being delivered in that what CoStar, as you mentioned, it says 4 to 5 stars. Those average rents are $1,750 again, which is 18% lower than the national average, which is why Charlotte is still so attractive for people to come from outside of the city. So, you know, I think that your presentation was great to be able to show multifamily and to the single family homes what's happening in the market, and that Charlotte is still an excellent place to be for the young people moving in and the older people that still want to stay here.
Yeah, I think, you know, we had a great lunch. We had, you know, Ed and Marjorie, and we had Alston, and, you know, we had a couple developers and other different groups. And I think I would kind of agree with some of the things that were said. I think public-private is a good way to go.
Yeah.
You know, maybe the city's donating the land and you know, making it work where the developer, the private developer, you know, can have a pro forma that makes sense. And, you know, be able to provide, if I'm building 1,500 units, if I've got a lower land cost basis and more density, and maybe I add another level on my apartment deal, I can, you know, I can offer some affordability in these good spots, so you know they're not going all the way down to York or where. I mean, you know, it's going to be hard to fill all this. I mean, and I don't want what happens if it starts getting real affordable, because that means pricing just crashed and I'm in big trouble. But and so's the economy for that matter. But you know, that kind of thing, I think, are things to be trying to focus, you know, more and more on. I know they're hard and they take time, but what doesn't?
Well, thank you so much. Can we have a big round of applause for our panelists today? What a great job. And again, I want to thank all of our sponsors. I want to thank all of you for being here, both in person and on Zoom. For those of you here who are here in person, we do have a reception set up outside, so we'll see you out there and have a chance to talk and follow up with the panelists, with Dr. Chu, and thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it.